Sunday evening following the NFL draft. I was a little delayed. That's why I pushed back the time because I was getting In-N-Out Burger following a busy weekend of the 49ers conducting the draft. Of course, they've got some more work to do. They're doing it as we speak, adding undrafted free agents. But might they add some veteran free agents? Something interesting happened just a couple days ago. The 49ers entering day 2 of the draft before their first pick happened. It ultimately happened at number 87. Decided to free up some money. They freed up $8.6 million via a contract restructure coming from Christian McCaffrey. All they did was convert base salary to signing bonus, tacked on a couple void years. In effect, Christian McCaffrey is now an A-lister with the 49ers. They had already considered him one, but now financially they've made that commitment to him. This was a good deal for Christian McCaffrey. He got the money sooner. He got a signing bonus right now instead of a base salary waiting for the fall. And because of that, his cap hits were prorated out into the future. The fact the 49ers tacked on a couple of void years means that they trust Christian McCaffrey to maintain himself as a valuable asset for this team. Because of that, if he does that, then the 49ers will not be hurt by this move. You only want to execute restructures like this with players who are fixtures. That's why the 49ers only pay the A-listers. Anyway, long story short, with the maneuver, Christian McCaffrey's bank account gets bigger right now, and the 49ers have more salary cap space right now because signing bonus money is prorated for cap purposes over several seasons. The $8.6 million that the 49ers got from restructuring Christian McCaffrey means they have about $11 million now in total 2023 salary cap space. They didn't need all this money to pay their draft class because on the top 51 rule here in the offseason, the draft class is actually only going to cost a couple $100,000. So they could have done it with the $1 to $2 million or whatever they had before. So I wonder, what was the pressing nature of the restructure? Because you look at the timing of everything and you say, well, they didn't need it for their draft class. You could say, well, they needed it for the regular season. I guess you always need to set aside some money for expenses over the course of the regular season. Guys are going to get hurt. You have to sign new guys. All right, at least $5 million you need to have ready as a buffer. Sometimes you want to have a buffer of money in case you trade for somebody like Christian McCaffrey. Last year, the 49ers did trade for Christian McCaffrey, but they got lucky because his cap number was only $690,000 due to a prior restructure with Carolina, so they were easily able to absorb his contract. You decide to trade for somebody else this year, you got plenty of capital. If you're the 49ers, you could trade for another star player mid-season. Well, you better be able to absorb his cap hit. You need room for that. So those are all reasons why the 49ers would want to free up money, but why did they do it now? Because all of those reasons, those don't happen until 4 months from now in the regular season. But they did it earlier, and they did it right before the draft. And here's why, I think. Because on May 2nd or right after the draft, free agent signings will no longer count against the compensatory pick formula. So this is a whole other subset of strategy that we talk about. The 49ers love playing the comp pick game. If you let free agents leave and you don't re-sign free agents in the early part of free agency to replace them, or if you sign cheaper free agents to replace them, you're probably going to get comp picks in the comp pick formula in the following draft. That whole formula, though, ceases to be in effect right around right now. Right after the draft, that formula no longer applies. So any free agents that you sign after the NFL draft don't hurt your chances of getting a comp pick. So it just so happens that this date has triggered, right? The comp formula is no longer in effect right now at just around the same time that the 49ers freed up $8.6 million in salary cap space. Might it be a coincidence? Maybe. But I think the 49ers are trying to arm themselves with option power. And one of their options with this newfound option power might be adding an edge rusher. Will the 49ers add an edge? There you see Yannick Ngakoue, Robert Quinn, Jadeveon Clowney, and Justin Houston. Those are among the players who are still available. Let's go to Spot Rack. They have the available edge rushers. We could take a look at this. I want to close that video. Maybe I could pause it. There we go. We'll stop it. You could see who's available. Leonard Floyd, Frank Clark, J.J. Watt's retired, but I guess not officially yet. But J.J. Watt's not technically on a list of available players. Robert Quinn, Yannick Ngakoue, Jadeveon Clowney, Matthew Ioannidis, Akeem Hicks, Marcus Golden, Puna Ford. I mean, we could go down the list, although I don't know why Golston's listed as a defensive end. He plays, I think, a little bit more inside. Anyway, I digress. We can go back to the nice graphic that Mike made, and then we're going to go to a conversation with John Lynch from yesterday. Will the 49ers add an edge rusher? To me, that's the most logical position that the 49ers can spend money on, because if you look at available right tackles, I know a lot of people are saying, well, why don't they spend to improve their offensive line? Well, it's not going as well at right tackle. As you can see, the available guys, George Fant, Billy Turner, somebody that I thought the 49ers might sign for depth at tackle. Well, they've already signed depth in Matt Pryor. Juwan James, Marcus Cannon. I don't know. I'm not. The further down this list you go, the older it gets. To a 37-year-old, then a 34-year-old. Anyway, you see what I mean. The right tackle market, not too robust. 49ers didn't feel the draft market was all too robust with offensive linemen. So they move on with Colton McKivitz as their preferred man. Now, Kyle Shanahan yesterday, as we take a quick tangent to talk about that, Kyle Shanahan, direct quote, said that they're viewing Colton McKivitz like they viewed Jake Brendel last year. And the outside didn't really believe in Jake Brendel last year. People were all up in arms that the 49ers were not trying to add a center given the uncertainty about Alex Mack's future. 49ers ended up going in-house. Jake Brendel worked out. This year, it's Mike McGlinchey having left, and the 49ers believe that it will work out with Colton McKivitz. At least that is the thought process as we speak. All right, let me open something here. I'm sorry. Did you guys not hear anything? My bad. Mike just let me know that you couldn't hear anything. That's because I had accidentally hit the mute button when I was shuffling screens there. Anyway, now you can probably hear me. And now we go back to the spreadsheet. Thanks, Mike. Mike's always looking out for us, by the way. Nice looking thumbnail there from Mike that I was putting up on the screen earlier. Anyway, how is the edge rusher going to fit if the 49ers do add one? Let's go to the defensive line room. Why don't we zoom in a little bit? Here we go. So Bosa, Armstead, Hargrave. I mean, that's the big three, right? There's no controversy about these three. It's Drake Jackson who's got to make that big second-year jump. Now, the 49ers have insulated themselves a little bit with B/C list defensive ends. Cleveland Farrell, Austin Bryant. He was hurt a lot of the time with Detroit. Farrell obviously only had a handful of sacks in his time with the Raiders. So you could see why the 49ers would want to sign some more name recognition to pair with Nick Bosa. Obviously, you have a Robert Beal Jr. He might be a good specialty guy right out of the gate, just given his athleticism, given his speed. But he's still going to be dependent on other players. Robert Beal Jr. is not somebody who's going to be winning against NFL double teams and winning, I think, mano a mano. He's going to win, given his athleticism, when he's buoyed by guys like Bosa, Armstead, and Hargrave eating up space. So there is a spot for somebody like Yannick Ngakoue. There is a spot for somebody even like Justin Houston, an aging veteran, a specialty rusher. I think you'd probably want to go with somebody who is more of a three-down player if you're the 49ers and you have a little bit of money. So you would look at, a Jadeveon Clowney potentially. The thing is, Clowney might still be out of the 49ers price range. These edge rushers, there wasn't quite the run on them that there was on other positions. And I think Jadeveon Clowney wants like $10 million a year. Well, the 49ers only have about that much cap space, and I guess they could structure things in a creative way, but they're still trying to be as cap sustainable as possible. So it's not like, oh, they have 11 million, they're going to spend 10 million on somebody. They're still looking at this in terms of the long term. And they already have, well, let's see what the liabilities are for the 49ers next season. I could read this to you off over the cap. They already have a lot tied up in future seasons. They don't want to enter cap hell like the Rams did this year, where they just don't have any room to restructure people anymore. Next season, the 49ers, this is 2024, have $252.98 million. So essentially $253 million tied up in only 35 players under contract. Okay, so the salary cap is, I mean, it's probably going to be a little bit lower than that. They're going to have to cut money somehow. They're going to have to rework deals, and they're going to have to add another nearly 20 players to have a full 53-man roster. They're going to have to do a lot of gymnastics to get under the cap already next year. I'm not saying that it's impossible to do that, and I think they have sustainable ways of doing it. I think they have a plan, but the more you spend now, the less you're going to have later, because cap space that is unused carries over. That being said, the timing of the Christian McCaffrey restructure cannot be ignored because of the reason that I mentioned earlier. Free agent signings are no longer going to count against the comp formula from here on out. The draft is the delineation. Before the draft, they count against the comp formula. After, they don't. So I asked John Lynch this question the other day. First, I verified that this is indeed the case. Here I said, my questions are in bold. John Lynch is not in bold. Moving forward, signings don't count against the compensation formula, right? Or the compensatory formula after the draft. John Lynch, yes, that's correct. So my follow-up question was, so does that give you some thoughts on free agency to consider players that you may not have considered before? Who was I talking about? I was talking about some of these guys, obviously. I was implying that. I think that John knew that I was implying that. John dodged the question a little bit. We're working on undrafted free agency right now. We've got a lot of numbers on our roster. Had a healthy draft. Our numbers were pretty good. We'll see where it's at after this. This is always kind of nerve-wracking because we're down here and they're up there filling out that class of undrafted free agents. But we've got it pretty slotted. We'll see. We're never going to stop looking for players that can help. And it's just a lot of the slots are filled, and where they aren't, we'll go at it to it if we need to. A little bit of word salad there at the end. I think I made the situation worse by not doing a good job reading it. But anyway, as you could tell, I'll keep this off on the side so you can keep on reading it if you want. John Lynch wasn't all too eager to directly answer my question. I get it. You know, I'm a reporter. I wanted to get some of this stuff on record. But he immediately pivoted to something else. He talked about them signing undrafted free agents, which has nothing to do with signing veterans. And then he said, yeah, but, you know, if we need to fill up a spot, they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop themselves. He talks about how good their numbers are, but he says, we'll see. So he didn't rule it out, is my point. And why would he rule it out? The 49ers have money now. 49ers have money to where maybe one of these guys is going to be available to them, or maybe a lesser-known edge rusher that's on the veteran market. What I know is that as I speak right now, the 49ers have 86 players under contract. They have a limit of 90 here in the offseason. So there's still 4 spots left. They're going to add a quarterback, I would think, in undrafted free agency. We're still waiting to see who exactly that might be. But even then, they're still going to have 3 spots. They can use those spots on veterans. And even if they hit 90, well, they can cut somebody and they can add another veteran. So will it be an edge rusher? We'll see. That's why I went through the available ones after the 49ers freed up $8.6 million. Why don't we go through the roster position by position, talking about some stuff? Or maybe I do that in another video. What do you guys want? Q&A or position by position breakdown? Why don't you vote for it in the comments section, and I'll take a look. I guess people are just arguing right now, but there's a poll. It's not an official poll. I just want you to type in what you want. You want a position by position breakdown? You don't want to listen to people's questions? Jonathan Lopez going for the position option. Yeah, trade for Chase Young. That'd be another edge rusher. But there are free agents available where you wouldn't have to use capital in a trade. So that might be the preferred option. People want the position breakdown. All right, we're going to go through this position by position. I wish I had a water. Oh, I do have a water over there. Give me 1 second. I'm going to grab my water. And then we will move to the position by position breakdown. All right, I just reached over the computer. I'm getting back in position, guys, for the position by position breakdown. Boom, there you go. Let's zoom out. And let us talk. 49ers going through this entire depth chart. Get the mic a little bit closer to me there. That's a lot better. This mic arm has proven to be a good little pickup to the show. Got better sound now than we ever have. This is a good room, too. Whenever I do shows from this room, always like the sound. So position by position breakdown. Let's get this $8.6 million off the screen, and let's put in a new text title. 49ers depth chart breakdown. Boom. We're going to go reverse order, okay? Normally we start with the quarterbacks. I think it's time to start with the defensive backs instead. All right, so DBs. Depth chart breakdown is on its way. Here we go. I'm going to highlight all of them. We'll go corners and safeties all in one fell swoop. You guys can see that, right? Yeah, you can. You could zoom in too. By the way, if you want to follow along during this exercise, I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm going to drop it into the chat section. There you go. It's in the chat section if you want to follow along right there. I don't think you can click on it in the screen, though, so you've got to go elsewhere. So here you go. Take a look at the cornerback spots. They only added one corner on draft weekend, and that's Deshaun Jameson. That's an undrafted free agent, so he's going to be a long shot to make the roster. Now, they did add a nickel. I slotted Darrell Luter Jr. in at nickelback. I think that there is a chance that he's going to have outside versatility because he's nearly 6 feet tall. So right now I have actually, funny enough, this is ironic, I got Samuel Womack slotted on the depth chart as corner because Samuel played mainly on the outside last year, right? I think they're ultimately looking at Samuel Womack as a nickel, so maybe we flip these two back around. But just because of the playing experience on the outside, I have Samuel Womack out there. Consider them interchangeable, though. Right now, I think the starter at nickel is Isaiah Oliver. You pick him up in free agency from the Falcons. Isaiah Oliver actually started his career playing on the outside for the Falcons. Doesn't quite have the speed to compete against some of the fast receivers there on the outside, but he's been really, really good on the inside. So you've got Charvarius Ward, you've got Lenore, who finished up gangbusters last year, and then you've got Isaiah Oliver, who also had a great few games to finish last season for the Falcons. So you've got three veterans. That's looking good. And then I think Darrell Luter, who they picked up out of South Alabama, he's got the wingspan. He's got the quickness. He's quicker than he is fast. He's not, he might not be as fast as Samuel Womack, who was a low 4.4 guy, which is why I like Samuel Womack potentially a little bit more on the outside. But when you're dealing with Samuel Womack, you're talking about him. That's another wingspan guy, right? Womack and Luter Jr. both have long arms. 49ers draft both in successive fifth rounds. Womack out of Toledo last year, Luter Jr. out of Alabama, South Alabama this season. Anyway, back to this. We'll see where Luter fits in, but at the end of the day, I think it's a versatile depth, and I think that the 49ers can really use it. Is this threatening Ambry Thomas? Yeah, it actually might threaten Ambry Thomas. I'm going to make a 53-man projection here in a little bit later in the offseason where I divide up this spreadsheet, and I put the big, bold, vertical dividing line a little bit further toward the middle. And when I do that, then I put the players who I think will make the 53 on the left side, and I put the players who, probably won't make the cut on the right side. So we have a 53-man projection and a 90-man roster. And for that projection, Ambry Thomas might end up being on the bubble. He's going to have to be a whole lot better than he was last year. I know injuries kind of derailed things, but they brought in Darrell Luter Jr. as somebody who could really threaten that position. Now, you have Trey Swilling and A.J. Parker. Those are longer shots. there could be an injury, right? And in that case, Ambry Thomas is probably your next depth. So I'm not saying that he's in massive trouble, but they did bring in somebody else who does seem to have positional versatility in Darrell Luter, and we'll see how that impacts the competition at cornerback moving forward. Either way, the 49ers need Ambry to more closely resemble the end of his rookie season than the sophomore season, which was not good at all for the 49ers. A lot went wrong for Ambry Thomas in that year. All right, moving on to safety. 49ers picked up, this was their top pick. It was Jair Brown. I'm going to have more on him. I'm talking to some people from Penn State this week. Jair Brown, right away, I'm slotting him in there right behind Tashawn Gibson. What the 49ers are really excited about is that Jair Brown is going to get to learn from Tashawn Gibson. This is a vet who's going to be 33 years old, who's played in a bunch of different systems, who's played at a Pro Bowl level, who was awesome last year. I mean, Tashawn Gibson showed up for the 49ers last year. What a great opportunity for a third rounder like Jair Brown to show up and get to learn from Tashawn Gibson. I mean, that's how a successful organization works. You let the osmosis happen. Guys are going to learn from other guys, right? And I think the 49ers have it set up really well to where Tashawn Gibson's on one more year of a deal. They re-signed him to a 1-year deal. Not a whole lot of money, which was a bargain for a guy who played as well as he did last year. I mean, Tashawn Gibson, his metrics were in the top 3 against the run and the pass. Talanoa Hufanga, obviously an all-pro. Well, Jair Brown, if they're running a 3-safety set, I think he is your third safety. Kyle Shanahan already hinted at that when he was talking about this pick. George Odom, great special teams player, special teams all-pro. He's a guy that can fill in a pinch in case somebody gets hurt, and they did have safety injuries last year. Miles Hartsfield might be one of their fastest defensive backs. They picked him up. He's a veteran from Carolina. Steve Wilks has his fingerprints all over this defense already. Steve Wilks brought Hartsfield over from Carolina. You know, he could be depth, maybe even for special teams. That does make this roster. We'll see if anybody gets hurt because I know it gets crowded around that 53-man mark, but Hartsfield not making all that much money, so he might be a flexible chess piece the 49ers can use. And then, of course, you've got the outside peripheral guys that were already with the team last year, practice squad guys, Quantrez Knight and Taylor Hawkins. I mean, they have an opportunity to take another leap above somebody like Hartsfield, see if they can maybe get into a position to see some playing time this year. Remember, it's not only the 53-man roster, it's also about the 16-man practice squad. And, you know, it even goes beyond that. It's about if they cut you and somebody doesn't immediately pick you up, or if another team picks you up and then they cut you, 5 weeks later, the 49ers may have a rash of injuries in their defensive backfield, but if they trust you and you know the system, they might call you up and you might show up and you might become a hero. I mean, think about Tashawn Gibson last year. It wasn't quite that story, but they called up Tashawn Gibson about 10 days before the season opener, and he ended up starting the season opener, and he ended up delivering at a top 3 level for this team last year. Now, Gibson was a veteran. Gibson, had pedigree. Gibson was the kind of guy that I think can plug in and deliver, but the point should remain the same across the board. The NFL is a league that might need you at the snap of a finger, and they might cut you at the snap of a finger. Always be ready and always maintain good relationships because you never know when they might come in handy. All right, depth chart breakdown is going to continue. Let's move to that linebacker position. Right here. Everybody like the video, sub to the channel. Where else are you getting depth chart breakdowns like this? We're going to have one coming out on The Athletic tomorrow, by the way, in the morning. That's going to be a fun one. I'm keeping it updated with all the UDFA signings the 49ers are making. Linebacker position. You're really good at the top of this linebacker position here with the 49ers. Warner and Greenlaw are the ones that are going to be on the field for almost all the snaps. If you're playing nickel, you only have 2 linebackers, so it's going to be Isaiah Oliver or whoever's playing slot cornerback that replaces the third linebacker. They obviously don't have Azeez Al-Shire anymore. He signed with Tennessee. So who's going to be that third linebacker? Well, right now, Oren Burks, I think, is in the lead for that role. But they have a lot of youngsters that are going to be vying for that spot. And, that includes Marcelino McCrary-Ball, was a rookie last year on the practice squad. I think, Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, he's been with the team for a while. He's more of a special teams guy. I think he's going to be more of the fourth linebacker on this team, but in a pinch, he could sit in there. But you look at the draft picks, maybe D. Winters can burst through and grab that third linebacker spot. Maybe not right away, but maybe at some point later in the season. Winters and Jalen Graham are the 2 draftees. The 49ers were deciding between these two as far as who to draft. They ended up picking Winters, but Graham was available around later in the 7th, so they picked Graham as well. Graham, I think, is a little bit stronger. Jalen Graham, you look at his frame, he's a little more muscle bound than D Winters. D Winters, I think, needs some work, especially on the upper body to not get pushed around at the NFL level. But Winters is faster and he's more explosive. They've already compared him to Dre Greenlaw, and he's a guy that I think, at a Sam linebacker spot, that third spot, if you're dialing up some blitzes, if you're Steve Wilks, D Winters has made his money blitzing at the college level. I think he's going to be able to come after the quarterback at the NFL level with that 4.4 speed that he has. That is exceptional speed for a linebacker. You got more standard linebacker speed with Jalen Graham. I haven't watched too much film on the third linebacker, another undrafted free agent that they picked up. That's Mariano Sari Marin. Let me put this big up on the screen. He is right here. I have him highlighted, but I'll get back to you once I do a little bit more research on him. That could just be a practice squad candidate. Maybe if Marcelino McCrary-Ball makes the team, he's somebody that slots in behind him. So 49ers looking solid at that linebacker position. Moving forward, defensive line. This is a fun one, right? Gosh, how many guys they have there? That's 4, 8, 12, 14 players under contract. I think they peaked out at 15 last year, but D Ford was one of them, and obviously D Ford was on his way to being cut. But across the board, Bosa, Armstead, Hargrave, Jackson, I guess this is what I talked about at the top of the show when we were speaking of the edge rusher that you might be able to plug in there, the veteran edge rusher, because in the second line, you have Cleveland Farrell, Kevin Givens, Javon Kinlaw, Austin Bryant. That's not a bad-looking second line. Kinlaw, this is big to me. Kinlaw was a starter last year. We know the knee issues. We know that he was on a pitch count. We know all the problems with Javon Kinlaw. Let's talk about the potential boost of him not having to be the man, because Javon Hargrave is the man. Javon versus Javon Kinlaw. Javon Kinlaw can now be a rotational piece for the 49ers at that defensive tackle spot, which I think is really, really worth mentioning, because you might be able to get Javon Kinlaw's best football out of him now that there's less pressure on him. I mean, you look deeper here. T.Y. McGill did some stuff for this team last year. It wasn't exemplary, but was a solid depth piece. 49ers have re-signed him. And then there's Kalia Davis. They think Kalia Davis is some DJ Jones-like explosiveness properties. Hasn't had a chance to show it on the field yet. Was recovering from the ACL, suffered in college last year. Got healthy by the end, but was never activated. Well, Kalia Davis is going to have a chance to crack the 53-man roster. So is Kerry Hyder. Hyder, he's a versatile defensive tackle, defensive end, Swiss Army knife type. Kerry Hyder, he was really good in 2020. Let's put it that way. 8.5 sacks. Hasn't been nearly as good the past 2 seasons for Seattle and then back with the 49ers. But the thing with Kerry Hyder is that he's better on the edge than he is at tackle, but they have to play him at tackle because they have a lot of edge rushers. And if you look at the roster here, they've added Robert Beal. He's obviously going to play on the edge at 247 pounds with that speed. I think Hyder's going to have to play on the inside. He's only defensive end depth for the 49ers, so he might be better there, but he's better for the team as a utility guy on the inside. So it's going to be interesting to me to see where he slots in. The 49ers obviously believe in strength and numbers along the defensive line, and especially if they do this, if they bring in another edge rusher, if the 49ers execute this, somebody's going to be squeezed out of the mix. And that's okay with the 49ers, but I'm just, telling you that they've got a crowd in that room. But the defensive line already looking stronger than last year with Hargrave as part of it. And Spencer Wage over here, he's actually from North Dakota State. He's an edge rusher, undrafted free agent that the 49ers signed. Alex Barrett, also he's not an undrafted free agent right now this year. He's been with the 49ers for a while, but he's also on the bubble or on the outside looking in. I'm going to divide this up into a 53-man roster projection soon. Anyway, that's a look at the defense. I know that brings us back to the top when I talked about signing an edge rusher. Exciting stuff, because the 49ers actually have money to turn that defensive line into a fearsome unit. It's already a fearsome unit. Let's put it that way. They've got Hargrave and Bosa and Armstead, but they could be, if they sign one of these guys, then you're really cooking with gas if you're the 49ers defensive line. Now, keep this all in perspective. 49ers were the number 1 defense in the National Football League last season. Number one. Whole league. They were at the very, very top. So how do they get better? Will they get better? Can they be number one by an even greater margin? I mean, you look at the depth chart, I think so. Because, one thing is everybody's freaking out about the Eagles. The Eagles no longer have this guy, Hargrave. The 49ers do. The biggest weakness last year was defensive tackle. It looks like a strength now. With Armstead healthy, Hargrave in a starting position, Givens and Kinlaw's depth, and Kalia Davis, and T.Y. McGill as extra depth. I mean, tackle looks fine. To be honest, edge looks fine. I wouldn't be shocked if the 49ers didn't sign one of the edge rushers, but if they do, they can make it even better. We knew the linebackers were good already, and it looks like the secondary has gotten a little bit better too because they have a dedicated nickel now in Isaiah Oliver. You're not having to play a safety, Jimmy Ward, out of position, and they've tried to specifically target the draft to have a versatile DB that fits in there, and they have him in Darrell Luter Jr. So on paper, this defense is better now than it was last year, hands down. I don't care if Amenahu's gone. I don't care if Sansa Mebucom is gone. I don't care if Jordan Willis is gone. The 49ers have reloaded. Javon Hargrave takes them to another level. Drake Jackson improving, if you expect him to, would take them to another level. The linebackers have matured another year, and the secondary has picked up some key pieces, and there should be another year of maturation there. So on paper, 49ers defense is looking strong. They should be able to maintain their number one status, but it's really, really going to be dependent, I think, on health, obviously, always is, and on how the whole unit kind of congeals with Steve Wilks as the new defensive coordinator. Anyway, that's our look at the 49ers defense. Why don't we have a quick sip of water? You want to see this while I'm drinking my water? Go for it. We're going to go through the whole offense next. It's going to be fine. The next hall of B-listers. I love it. People are starting to talk in my lingo, in my terminology. Chase Young, Clowney are names, not productive players. I think Clowney's a productive player. Chase Young, they didn't pick up his option. That tells you something, right? I didn't mention Chase Young, though. You can't judge everybody against Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa is going to be the best in the league. I'm not saying they're going to pick Clowney, but you have to pick somebody, and pick, I guess, is the wrong word because we just got done with the draft. Sign. You have to sign somebody, if you do sign somebody, that's going to be cost efficient. That's going to bring you production that is worth the money you invest in him. Because now the 49ers do have the money to spend. If they choose to do that, they can also carry over money into next season. But they restructured Christian McCaffrey with interesting timing, to say the least. Frank Clark, he's still available. So, yeah. 49ers do have a stacked roster. They still do. And they did stack the depth with this NFL draft. All right. Let's move on. Depth chart breakdown. Let's go to the offensive line. I did a whole thing on the offensive line yesterday. I mean, the offensive line here, I'm going to highlight what I think is a key. These three guys right here, they're going to be together for the second straight season. Aaron Banks at left guard, Jake Brendel at center, Spencer Burford at right guard. It was a major, major win for the 49ers last year that they figured out left guard, center, and right guard, the interior line, despite the fact that they had a lot of departures. These were three brand new starters along the interior line last year for the 49ers, and it went well. Brendel re-signed. He was Pro Bowl alternate. Aaron Banks, impressed. Spencer Burford was the worst member of that line, but good enough to start as a rookie. They're going to, push him with John Feliciano now, who's the veteran. That really helped fortify the interior for the 49ers. But between these three, you made a lot of progress last year. So the question is, how do you fill the big question mark? Because there's no question mark at left tackle. That's Trent Williams, right? Matt Pryor is the swing tackle. 49ers like him. He's a veteran. They think that he could plug in if need be for an injury, but it's right tackle where you've lost Mike McGlinchey. I mentioned at the top of the show, and I'm going to come big right here so I could really emphasize this with some eye contact. Jake Brendel was last year's question mark that the 49ers front office believed in. Colton McKivitz is this year's question mark along the offensive line that the front office believes in. Last year, the front office was right. Will they be correct this season? I don't know. But Kyle Shanahan has cited the success of Brendel last year in his defense of Colton McKivitz and the belief in Colton McKivitz. So we go back and we see McKivitz, that's the big question spot, insulated by Jalen Moore, who started some games at tackle for the 49ers. Then obviously you have Joey Fisher. I'm collecting some more intelligence on Joey Fisher, the undrafted lineman out of Shepherd University. I'm not sure if they're going to be seeing him as a guard or as a tackle, because the one weakness with Joey Fisher, who's, inhumanly strong and obviously has great metrics as far as speed and mobility go, the arm length has been a question with Joey Fisher. So maybe you think about him as a guard. I'm not sure yet. But right now, Colton McKivitz is the front runner at right tackle. Now, let me make myself big again here. The 49ers offensive line has gotten better season by season in pass protection. They were bad early on in the Shanahan era, like downright bad. Even in this 2019 Super Bowl year, they didn't have great pass protection. 2020 was atrocious. That's when everybody got hurt. And then finally, the last two seasons, 2021 and 2022, the 49ers have been above average in pass block win rate. It was a big deal for Brock Purdy to be able to operate behind a good pass blocking offensive line. So it's gotten better over time. They've made investments over time. There's a lot of casual complaining on the internet about the offensive line, but it's trending in the right direction. I was probably the first person in the media that was saying the 49ers needed to improve their offensive line. I was saying it back in 2019. I still think that should be a priority and an emphasis, but I'm also able to recognize that they have done some of the necessary work. The next step of necessary work and investment is ensuring that the interior keeps on growing at a good trajectory like it did last year, and that McKivitz is indeed the man at right tackle. And if he's not, make sure that you've plugged somebody in there that is. Because Trent Williams also is no spring chicken on the left side. He's going to be 35 years old. So you're going to need to find a way to make sure that the future is taken care of at left tackle and the present is taken care of at right tackle. And maybe McKivitz is it for the present, but still Trent Williams is not getting any younger. The good news for the 49ers is that next season they're slated to have a ton of draft capital. I believe a first, a second, 3 third-rounders, and so on and so forth. That should be enough draft capital to really start thinking about the tackle position on offense in the long term. But this year, the draft just didn't have those type of prospects available to the 49ers because they didn't pick until late in the third round. The good news, though, is that they have the personnel in place right now to have a solid line with a lot riding on Colton McKivitz, and we'll see how he does moving forward. But 1 through 4, left tackle to right guard, 49ers are not looking bad up front. All right, how about we move over to, what are we doing next? Tight ends? Yeah, tight end should be good. Whatever happened to Nick Zakelj? Nick Zakelj, I mean, they like his progress. We'll see if he could be credible interior depth this year. I don't think, barring injuries, not going to unseat the guys ahead of him, Burford Banks or the center Jake Brendel, but you need quality interior depth, and that's where Nick Zakelj is at. Eddie Dominguez is not worried about the 49ers O-line. A lot of the issues are overblown. I mean, people are way too spastic on Twitter and on YouTube. People didn't think it was a problem at all a few years ago, and they should have been saying it was a problem. And now that it's a problem, it's the biggest problem in the world. When, in fact, the offensive line has improved over that time, and now it's above average offensive line, even in pass protection. They've always been a good run blocking offensive line, but even the pass protection is good for the 49ers now. Okay, let's move on. We are now at the tight end position. All right, this is really interesting, and maybe I should zoom in a little bit. Tight end, you added Braden Willis and you added Cam Latu. George Kittle's George Kittle. He's obviously the best in the game. But the 49ers double dipped for a reason. That's because I think they want to upgrade from Ross Dwelley and from Charlie Werner. Now, injuries are going to happen. These are not surefire draft picks. I've talked a lot about Cam Latu. The 49ers think he still has a lot of improvement available to him. They said the exact words were, we think he still has a lot left in his body. And I hope so, because his metrics aren't great, yet they picked him late there in the third round. Braden Willis, I mean, that was a much more round appropriate pick when they picked him there in the 7th. Those statuses are out the window now. Who cares where you got picked? Even if they add an undrafted free agent, it's going to be a competition. And it's not just going to be between Latu and Willis. It's going to be between Latu, Willis, Dwelly, and Werner to see who can be the pairing for George Kittle, because the 49ers are looking to upgrade that. Willis, big yards after the catch guy at Oklahoma and a big-time blocker. Latu, positional convert a few years ago. I think his blocking mobility, his dexterity blocking is better than people give him credit for. He caught a few touchdown passes at Alabama, actually a program record last season, but he's not this in 2022 and 2021, but he still has a lot of work to do to become an explosive NFL caliber talent, which is why people are wondering why the 49ers picked him in the 3rd round instead of the 5th. My mock draft, oops, my bad. My mock draft had Cameron Latu going to the 49ers, but in the 5th. Thought he was a 5th round type of talent, not a 3rd rounder. That being said, it was a late 3rd rounder, last pick of the 3rd round for the 49ers, and they didn't have a 4th round pick, and they believe he's got a lot of upside. I think that the 49ers front office has earned the benefit of the doubt at this point. They built a really impressive roster. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm just letting you know that when I mock drafted Cameron Latu to the 49ers, he was joining the team later. All right, let's move on. Next position, where are we at? Receiver. Receiver, this group is looking strong, and I'm not even really sure how to slot the backups. You'll see here in a second as I explain. Oh, the taste of water. It's really good. Obviously, Ayuk. Obviously, Deebo Samuel. Jawan Jennings is your wide receiver 3. Jennings going to be a restricted free agent next offseason. I think I'm going to have to reorder this. I shouldn't have Tay Martin making the 53-man. Chris Conley is a speedster, a vet that they signed. Ray McLeod's going to make the team. He's going to be your number 4 guy, gadget weapon, special teams. Then you've got Danny Gray, Ronnie Bell, the 7th rounder. The more I look at this, the more, I think Ronnie Bell makes the team. I think we could even do some changes here in real time. Let's get Ronnie Bell up here. Let's move Tay Martin over to the side. Chris Conley. Yeah, Chris Conley could be your 6. I mean, it's a Chris Conley-Danny Gray battle. Both of these guys have blazing speed. Danny Gray, obviously, is on the rookie deal. Chris Conley is a veteran. Contractually, you'd rather have Danny Gray make the team. But if he doesn't impress, he doesn't impress. And Kyle Shanahan now has 2 burners, while everybody else might be focusing on Ayuk, Samuel, Jennings, Kittle, McCaffrey, the other eligibles coming out of the backfield. Gray and Conley are 2 absolute burners. So pay attention to where they end up on this 53-man roster once the 49ers do end up cutting it down. They recently re-signed Willie Snead, probably more of a off-season body, practice squad type of player. They yo-yoed him a bit last year. But that receiving room is looking strong. And, you've got to love that they keep on pouring on. By that, I mean, use the draft pick on Ronnie Bell, who could return punts, good possession guy, good hands, good route runner, needs to add some strength for the NFL level. So maybe he's a developmental guy. Fine. He was a 7th rounder. Maybe he does end up on the practice squad. But it is the 49ers' effort to keep the line moving and keep talent rolling in. Okay. Running back. Look how loaded the running back room is now, just with numbers. McCaffrey, Mitchell, Mason, Davis Price. And then they have 2 undrafted free agents, Ronald Awatt and Kalan LeBourne. It's right here, these 2 free agents. It's going to be a tough time making the roster for them unless there are injuries. And there almost always are injuries in the running back room. So that's why the 49ers are loading up there. Then you have the 2 fullbacks. And I said 2 because the 49ers have a new one. There's Kyle Juszczyk, and then there's Jack Coletto out of Oregon State, who played fullback, he played linebacker, he played everywhere. The fear is jack of all trades, master of none. But he's so athletic that Jack Coletto might end up being a master of something, and that could be the fullback position, for which the 49ers require tremendous athleticism. So watch out for Jack Coletto. If only as a practice squad guy this year, could be in that Josh Hokett role. Kyle Juszczyk, still going strong, but the 49ers have to prepare for when he might not be available and for a future without him at some point. So that's what Jack Coletto is all about. Now, as far as the running backs go, Ty Davis Price, high ankle sprain last year in week 2, kind of derailed his season, but he's part of that foursome right here. McCaffrey, Mitchell, Mason, and Price that's going to be vying for big playing time. Obviously, McCaffrey is the fixture. Mitchell needs to stay healthier. We all know this. Mason, will there be an uptick in carries this year? I hope so, because I like watching him run. And then there's Ty Davis Price, almost as a dark horse now, a year removed from being picked in the 3rd round. Remember, Jordan Mason was an undrafted free agent. All right, and now we move to QB, the final position, the final frontier, quarterback. Right now, this is Purdy's obviously at the top of the depth chart. The 49ers have said this. And then I've been talking a little bit on social media, and Ian Rappaport, I guess, has been as well. Trey Lance, QB3. Here's what he means. And look, is this going to upset people if I do this? What if I take Trey Lance and I put him there and I put Sam Darnold ahead of him? Is this causing you to lose sleep at night? I just flipped Trey Lance and Sam Darnold there. If that's causing you to lose sleep at night, then you need to reorganize what your priorities in life are. It does not matter if Trey Lance or Sam Darnold are listed as 2A, 2B, or QB2, QB3 right now. It honestly does not matter at this point. The only definitive piece of information that we have as far as the 49ers preferred pecking order here is that both John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have said and are on the record saying that Brock Purdy is the favorite option at quarterback. But Brock Purdy is also shaded in red here, or in pink, whatever you want to call it, because he's hurt. So these two right here, Sam Darnold and Trey Lance, are going to have to duke it out this offseason. OTAs, training camp, all of that good stuff. And we're going to figure out who is the preferred option for QB2. Ian Rappaport said that Lance is QB3 because he believes that Sam Darnold is higher up in the pecking order right now than Trey Lance. It's all an unofficial pecking order. It might be based on some thoughts from people on the staff, but it's all unofficial. If Trey Lance is good enough to be QB1, he can prove it this offseason. You know why? Because Brock Purdy's not available. Brock Purdy's done great stuff in games, but he's not available right now to play. So if Trey Lance blows down the doors this offseason, he can start the season, and then if he blows down the doors during the regular season, he can be in that QB1 spot. So it doesn't matter if I list him as QB3. Doesn't matter if I list him as QB1 or QB2. Doesn't matter if I list him as QB1. What happens moving forward is what's going to determine how this works. Fans are all obsessed with order of the depth chart. The 49ers aren't. The 49ers are obsessed with cultivating as many options as possible. Purdy, Lance, Darnold. You see which one delivers the bullseye this season. Maybe 2 of them do. It'd be weird if 3 did, but I guess they could. You could get bullseyes from all 3, but injuries that make you go to all 3. Whatever. However it shakes out, the more options you have, the better position you're in if you're the 49ers to handle the unexpected twists and turns of the season. And that, my friends, is my roster breakdown. It's always really funny how I get done with the substantive parts of my show and we're about to hit the 49-minute mark. That's exactly what's about to happen here. And I think a show about the 49ers, me talking for a long time about their roster, delving into all the nuances of everything, I think such a show should end at 49 minutes. It deserves to be 49 minutes long. But I ask you to do a favor. How about you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and then tune in tomorrow and check out The Athletic tomorrow for the big 49ers depth chart article. All right, 49 minutes. We hit it. Like the vid, subscribe, do all that you need to. Everybody have a good Sunday evening, and stay tuned by hitting that little alert button. Maybe more content is coming soon. Maybe not maybe. I think definitely it is. All right, everybody take care.